Hello and welcome to today's lesson about adding and subtracting fractions. First, let's talk about some important vocabulary that you will need to know and understand for today's lesson. Common denominator. This is a non-zero number that is a multiple of the denominators of two or more fractions. For example, the fractions 1/2 and 2/3 have common denominators of 6, 12, 18, and other multiples of 6. Fractions with the same denominator already have a common denominator. So for example, 1/6 and 4/6 already share a common denominator. Unlike denominators, denominators that are different as in 1/2 and 1/3. Now, let's talk specifically about adding fractions. We are going to start by adding the fractions 3/4 and 6/8 together. Before we can start adding these fractions, however, we have to find a common denominator. Here is the process we will take to do that. We are going to write the numbers 4 and 8 because those are both the denominators in each of these numbers. And we're going to list out the first 5 multiples of each of these factors. 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 12, times 4 is 16, and times 5 is 20. Now let's move on to 8. 8 times 1 is 8, times 2 is 16, then 24, 32, and then 40. Now we're going to look at these two lists and see if they have any numbers in common. If they don't, we have to keep listing multiples until we find one that matches. But if they do, then we are already done. In the cases of 4 and 8, 8 is their smallest common multiple. So we are going to change both of the fractions up top into fractions that we can add with like denominators. Since 6/8 already has the correct denominator, we get to leave that fraction alone. 3/4 is the one we have to change. In order to make 4 into 8, we need to multiply it by 2. Whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top, so we're also going to multiply 3 by 2. 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 2 is 8. So now we have the fraction 6/8 that we're going to use, and we're going to add that to 6/8. Our answer will be 12/8. What do you notice about this fraction? If you said that it is an improper fraction, you are correct. We need to take this improper fraction and change it into a mixed number. How many 8s are there in 12? There is only one because 8 is extremely close to the number 12. 1 will be our whole number for our mixed number, and 8 will remain our denominator. If I take 8 out of 12, how much do I have left over? If you said 4, you were correct. I can further reduce this fraction by dividing the top and the bottom numbers by a common factor. Thinking about the numbers 4 and 8, I know that both of these numbers are numbers that are divisible by 4. Whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom. You'll notice that I went ahead and wrote my 1 on the other side of the equal symbol. This is because nothing is going to change with the 1 since it's a whole number. When I divide 4 by 4, I get 1, and when I divide 8 by 4, I get 2. So my final answer is 1 and 1/2. When you are doing these problems on your own, you may either end up with a mixed number that is not reduced or a mixed number that is reduced. Both of these will be accepted as correct answers. However, improper fractions will not be, so you will have to change any improper fractions that you end up with into mixed numbers. Now let's look at one more example of how this process works. We are going to be looking at the mixed number 1 1/6 plus 3/4. The first thing we have to do is change 1 1/6 into an improper fraction. In order to do this, we are going to multiply the denominator by the whole number and then add in the numerator and use our original denominator as our new denominator. 1 1/6 written as an improper fraction is the same thing as 7/6. This is the new number that we will now use. Now we need to find a common denominator for 6 and 4. 6 times 1 is 6, then 12, 18, 24, and 30. Remember, I am listing the first 5 multiples only for now, unless I need to go further because there isn't one that matches. The first 5 multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. If we look at both of these lists, you will notice that there is a matching multiple already. That number is 12. Now I need to think about what I have to do to 6 to make it 12. I'm going to multiply it by 2, which means I also have to multiply 7 by 2. And then what do I need to do to 4 to make it 12? Well, I multiply by 3, which means I'll multiply 3 by 3. Here is going to be our new problem. 7 times 2 is 14 over 12, plus 9 over 12. Now I can add. 9 plus 14 is 23. 12 is our denominator and it will stay the same. You will notice that I have an improper fraction for my answer. So now I have to change this improper fraction into a mixed number. How many 12s are there in 23? I know that in 24 there are 2 12s, but since 23 is smaller than 24, I know that there's only going to be one whole 12 in this number. When I take 23 and I subtract 12 away from it, I end up with the number 11. So our final answer will be 1 and 11/12. Finally, let's talk about subtracting fractions. Let's start with this problem, 9/10 minus 1/3. Just as in addition, the first thing that we need to do is find a common denominator. Let's list the first 5 factors of each of these denominators. For 10, they are 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. For 3, they are 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. Do we have any matches yet? We don't, because 3 is much smaller than 10, so we are going to continue listing factors for the number 3 and see if we can find any that match in the 10 row. Next we have 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. I notice right away that 30 is now their common denominator. That's the number that matches in both of these rows. So now I need to figure out what I have to do to 9/10 and 1/3 to make their denominators equal 30. In order to make 9/10 into 30, I'm going to multiply by 3, which means I have to multiply the 9 by 3 as well. In order to make 3 into 30, I multiply by 10, which means I also have to multiply 1 by 10 as well. 9 times 3 is 27, and 10 times 3 is 30. We're going to be subtracting now 10/30ths from that number. Now that they have common denominators, I can go ahead and solve this problem. 27 minus 10 is 17. 30 is the denominator that carries over to that side. Since 17 is a prime number and has no other factors other than 1 and itself, this is as simple as this answer can be. So our final answer for this problem is 17/30. Let's try this process one more time. 4/5 minus 1/2. First things first, we have to list all of the first 5 multiples of 5 and 2. The first 5 multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. The first 5 multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. We have a match in the number 10. What do I need to do to make 5 into 10? I'm going to multiply it by 2, which means I also have to multiply 4 times 2 as well. What do I have to do to make 2 into 10? I have to multiply it by 5, which means I also have to multiply 1 by 5. My 2 new fractions are going to be 8/10 minus 5/10. 8 minus 5 is 3, and 10 is the denominator that stays the same. Since 3 is a prime number and has no other factors other than 1 and itself, we know that this number is as simplified as it can be. 3 also does not go into 10, so that's another way that we know that we cannot simplify this fraction further. Our final answer for 4/5 minus 1/2 is 3/10. Here is your practice problem of the day. Find the answer to these two problems, 2/7 plus 5/14 and 11/12 minus 1/4. Don't forget to find common denominators first by listing the first 5 multiples of each of the denominators in each of these two problems. If you do not find a common multiple at first, keep listing until you do. When you do, change the denominators and the numerators by multiplying them by whatever number it takes to make the denominators match. Then add or subtract. With addition, if you end up with an improper fraction, please turn it into a mixed number and simplify it if you can. With subtraction, if you won't end up with a mixed number, but if you can simplify it, please do. Good luck.